Okay, so today we are gonna go in 2 hours, which is kind of optimistic. So we're gonna have a 2 hours 15 hard stop, but we're gonna try to fit it into 2 hours. We're gonna go through very quickly the overall process of taking a character concept and then turning it into an animated model in Unity. So we're gonna, before this, I've set up this little thing right here. It's in Universal Render Pipeline, uses new input system. Unfortunately, the camera controller is a little bit jank, but it gets the job done. So we're gonna, hopefully by the end of this, take the model we make in Blender and stick it right in here. But for now, and there is a package that I dropped in Discord before this that you can find. We won't need it yet, but if we get to this point, it's up here, controller-base.unity package. And in Unity, the way, because packages are not projects, they're sort of like subsets of projects. But what you do is if you make a new project, all you do is you go to import package, custom package, and you just find it in your downloads folder. So for now, I'm going to close Unity, but we'll get back to that towards the end of this. So basically, for every step in this process, we're going to shoot to try to get things done in about 25 minutes, which again is optimistic. So we're gonna end up probably, here's the agenda. The very first thing is there's broadly two steps to this. There's the workflow that's in Blender, and then there's the workflow that's in Unity. And Blender, and also I guess what we're doing on this iPad. So we're gonna do a quick turnaround sketch of what we want to model on the iPad, and then we'll use that as reference in Blender. So the first steps, when you got to ideate. You find things like silhouettes. I don't think that's how you spell silhouettes. And then you draw what's called a turnaround or a character sheet. This is also done in like cartoons when you have like a front-on view of a character, a side view of a character, a three-quarter view of a character, those sorts of things. Then what you do is you take that into Blender and you block out a low poly model. And this is something, I can't remember if it's called block modeling or box modeling, but basically you literally start with the cube and you just build from there. So then you have what's called a base mesh. And you can do a couple things. You can basically there's certain degrees of refinement you can do. So Blender has a mode called sculpting, where you can actually basically, as if you are actually working with real clay, you can touch up with fine details, make the mesh look really pretty. And then what you do is you take all that geometric information, all the geometry data, and you bake it down and use it as a normal map on your low poly mesh. We're not going to do that today because we don't have time, but like that's how, on like a AAA workflow, you definitely have detail maps and cavity maps and those sorts of things. And those come from, it's called a multi-resolution workflow, where you have a high-res mesh, a low-res mesh, they roughly line up, and you basically project details from one onto the other. We're going to take our base mesh, though, and probably apply what's called a subdivision modifier. And that is just a fancy way of saying you take a square, or a quad. You take what's called a quad, and you apply a filter, and it turns into more quads. And then depending on the algorithm you use for that, sometimes it can turn into like circular quads. And that's a quick way to up detail, but without adding too much geometric complexity. So then we're going to have, we'll lock in the mesh. Now we have to start processing it. So you'll notice that in Blender, I just have a cube. There's no color on this cube. It's just gray. It's got vertex colors. It's colored white, and under the lighting it looks gray. But in our reference art, this is full of all sorts of colors, and there's a couple approaches. You can either, if you look at this quad up here again, you can either assign colors per vertex, like this, and then what happens is they'll interpolate, and a face will compute its color based on, you know, the different vertex color it has. Or you can use what's called a UV map, as in XYZ UVW coordinates, to define a 2D projection of your mesh that you paint texture data onto. And so that's what we'll look at very quickly. We're gonna have to do two things, which is UV unwrap the mesh, and then we paint a texture on it. And depending on how much time we have, we can maybe look into baking on ambient occlusion, but we're probably not going to get there. The next step, this is where, so now at that point, if this were a static asset, you'd have something.
Are you showing the
yes, I am, sorry.
Sorry.
Yep, iPad. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just writing down things. I apologize. Thank you. At this point, this is enough in your workflow. You have a static asset. So like a crate or a barrel or grass or something. But the thing about humanoids is they're not static, they're dynamic. In Unity, they're not just a mesh, they're called a skinned mesh, which means they can hold animation data. So now this is where we cross the line into animating, which is still in Blender, but we're a step closer to the Unity workflow. When you have a static mesh, you need to rig it, which means basically if you think of the mesh as a puppet, the rig is all the strings you attach to the limbs to make motion happen. Rigging can be done sloppily, or it can be done very comprehensively with lots of like meta rigs and all this. Like there are things you can do with look targets and inverse kinematics. I might, if we have time, again, I'm hedging a lot because we probably won't, but if we have time, we can maybe look at something called inverse kinematics, which is basically where you take your arm and you say, I want to move my hand over here. How does my whole arm have to bend to accommodate the motion of my hand? So it's you take the final point that you want to move and you work backwards up through your shoulder. And the speaker was mentioning robotics, like this is also something that's relevant in robotics. We're not going to do any computation, Blender just handles it. But we might have time for an IK chain. And what's cool about that is it makes animating a lot faster. And then from there, we're going to have a rigged, textured model. And then we're ready to animate. We have our puppet. It's fully articulated. It's good to go. It looks nice. It's basically final as it's going to appear on the engine. Now what we have to do is we have to define animation actions. So Blender is something called an action editor, and actions are basically just clips of keyframe data. I'll explain what keyframes are once we get there. You can think of it as the sort of the most meaningful bits of information that tell you how to animate your model. And we're going to do two actions. We're going to have an idle pose. And we're going to have the character running. And if we have time for it, maybe we'll do a jump animation. Importantly, and this is an important distinction, these two poses loop. Jumping is what's called one-shot playback. It just happens once. So then once we've done all of that, we package up our final thing, our Blender project, into what's called an FBX file, which is this proprietary Autodesk format that Unity is really partial to. If you use other engines like Godot, you might see something called GLTF, which is this more open source standardized thing that's sometimes popular for augmented reality because the idea is sort of like if you think of a JPEG for a 2D image, you can think of a GLTF as a 3D model. So if you like ever download something from Sketchfab, which is this website with 3D models on it, you might get it either as an FBX file or as a GLTF file. But Unity uses FBX files, and that's how we'll be packaging our data. So after that, we bring our FBX character model into Unity, and at this point we're very close. What we have to do is we need to build what's called animator state machine, which is just, it sounds intimidating, but it's literally just it's Unity's map that it uses to say ours is, if you've taken a course called CS Theory or Fundies, you'll know that state machines are these things where you have like a node and then a path, an edge pointing to another node, and sometimes they're cyclical. And Unity determines which animation clip to play based on the state of an animator component. We're just going to have like a two-state animator component. Again, one of them is idle, and one of them is moving. And we're going to map the jumping and the walking to the moving and idle to being still. The final thing is we need to synchronize the animator controller / state machine with the, the animator state machine. We need to synchronize that with what's called a character controller. And that's the thing that actually takes player input and sends it as commands to our Unity game. We're using a rigid body based one, so it's not kinematic, but that's not an important distinction. So by the end of this, hopefully we'll have something moving around that plays a walk animation when you're walking and plays a jump animation when you jump. That's a lot. And yeah, and that explanation was a lot. So before I go any further, are there questions? I will check the chat. If there are no questions, we'll jump right into Blender. The other thing I'm going to do is, because we've got like 4 or 5 intermediate steps here, at the end of every step, I'm going to upload in a thread here. I guess I'll make it when we get there, but I'll make it as a sub-thread of the general channel. I'll upload the final file for that step, and then you can download it to sort of keep up with what I'm doing, because we'll be rushing a little bit. Also, people before this, when we were discussing this, there was interest in this workflow for 2D animation, and the good news is a lot of this is cross-transferable. So a lot of the stuff for rigging in 2D and 3D is the same. A lot of the stuff for texturing in 2D and 3D is the same. And I can link you to a video I did for Global Game Jam that goes over 2D sort of paper cutout puppets. So if there's no more questions, let us see. We're gonna very briefly do a concept. So literally that's just gonna look like, okay. We don't wanna copy this. So the most important thing about a character is that it has a strong silhouette that can read from the camera angle where usually your in-game camera is gonna be. So here I'm assuming this game is it's a third-person game, in which case this 3/4 view is actually dead on. It's good for presentation. So this guy has like some kind of cloak and some arms, and they're just, oh, those arms are bad, but that's okay. You don't really need to be proportional. This can be messy. What it does need to be is distinctive. You need to be able to read without any color data the shape of the thing that you're looking at. If you can't do that, it's going to look messy and ambiguous, and that's kind of a problem. So this is sort of a guy in an idle pose. If we block him to the side, you can decide things like posture, like does he stand this way, does he stand this way? I don't know. But it's important when you're doing your turnaround view that the main points of the character track between the different poses. So you kind of find the landmark details of your character, and you make sure that they line up between all the poses. So for me, I like to do the head, I like to do the torso, I like to do the elbows, the hands, the hips, the knees, and the feet. Let's see. So this is not exactly chibi cuteness, but that's all right. There we go. Yeah, this is weird. We can tweak some of this soon, but and for the hands, we'll just do a little bit of an overlay, kind of like that, so we can sort of see. So this guy's gonna have a little bit of a hunch. It's very stiff. His line of action isn't really present. Like if you draw a line right through, it's bad. But what's valuable though is once we've rigged this, once we have our puppet, you can articulate his joints so that he looks more dynamic than in this turnaround. I've done something here which is slightly bad, which is I haven't drawn the character in a T-pose. A T-pose is just when you have the arms out straight, like this. And T-poses are relevant because when you're rigging bones and you're trying to assign vertex weights, it simplifies the process. So we may actually end up, depending, we'll modify the character concept to maybe be in a T-pose. One last thing is we can do this won't necessarily be used for modeling, but just as kind of a roadmap to try to aspire to, we can try to do sort of a 3/4 view where we'd have a line of action where the guy is like, you know, kind of not prone, he's like ready to do something, I don't know, like that. So more than just static, but it helps to sort of get an idea of what you want your poses to be. So I'm literally just gonna open up, what's it called? Screen shot. And I'm just gonna steal this from my iPad. And I don't like his posture, but we're running low on time. I need it to go to documents. Okay. So I'm gonna we don't need the iPad anymore, hopefully. Everybody all set so far? If I don't hear anything, I assume we're okay. So here we are in Blender. And just so you know, I am on a laptop, which is not ideal for 3D modeling, but is the good news is you guys are also all probably on laptops, so you can follow one-to-one what I'm doing. Relevant stuff to know is that this cube in Blender, this 1x1 cube in Blender, corresponds to 1 meter by 1 meter in Unity. So likely, where are we? Control, there we go. If you hold Control, your cube will snap to grid lines. So 2 of these cubes is about the height of a very tall human being inside of Unity. So we're gonna try to make our model correspond with that as a loose guide. And I haven't done this in a minute, so I don't remember. There we go. So if you hold Shift and use your mouse pad, you can pan. If you don't hold Shift, you're gonna orbit. And there's one other thing. How do you zoom? Oh boy. Command. Hold Command and you can zoom. So if you look in the lower left, I've got my keystrokes visualizing so that you can hopefully follow along. So now what we're gonna do is go to Shift A for add, Shift add, and we go down here to image, and we want a reference photo. We made a screenshot just now. There's our guy. And he's almost 2 meters tall. Perfect. So we are gonna scale him down slightly. And that's probably, if you hit Z, you can go to wireframe mode. And then you just see the edges of a mesh, not the face data. All right. Now the last thing is I want to center my reference because I'm going to be modeling relative to the origin. And then also my side view, let's see, this side, right? I always get confused between left and right. So go to -X, Shift A, reference. There's our guy. And again, just scale him down a little bit. So now we're gonna get into block. Now, if you look, we sort of have this turnaround. From certain angles, it almost looks like you can sort of imagine what a person would look like in this case. And now we're starting to construct our character. All right. Shift A is your friend. It lets you access anything you can instantiate inside of Blender. So we're gonna pay attention to this cube guy. Your other friend is Tab. So I'm in something right now called object mode, which is where I can click on individual objects, but not their vertices. So if I hit Tab, all of a sudden I can't click on different objects, but the object that I had selected, now I can drag it around and do stuff to it. Okay. Notice that when I'm in edit mode and I manipulate vertices, the origin stays fixed. That's something to, sometimes people move stuff when they're in object mode and they lose track of where their origin is and then they get confused why rotational pivots are off. So again, I'm going to go to wireframe. We're going to zoom in and we will, let's begin with the torso. So I'm actually going to use something called, no, not yet. Okay. Yeah. So here we have the goal basically is to line up the contours of this cube with what we want the torso to be. So maybe I will do it in wireframe's fine. This way we can see. So literally all I'm gonna do is just kind of align stuff. This right here, this is important, this little box. If I am straight on and this box isn't selected and I orbit, I only selected one vertex. If it is on, sorry, oh no, nope. What that does, it's X-ray selection. So see, now I can see all the other points. If I do the same box select operation, everything that intersects the viewing plane is now selected. So in this case, that's what we want. You don't always want that. Okay, we're gonna do something called a loop cut, which is, I'm gonna hide these. If you wanna hide things in Blender, you just select them by shift clicking and you hit H. And if you want them back later, you do, is it Option H? Yeah, Option. It would be Alt on Windows. So that they're still there, they're not deleted, you just can't see them. Okay, a loop cut is when you hit Command R and Blender is smart enough, if you're highlighting a volume, to be able to trace a path around it. We want to cut it this way. Now you can actually slide the cut. See that? You can slide along the edges that bound it. All right, and then here's what we're gonna do. Make sure again that you've got your, do I have it on? I don't have it on. Yeah, this is gonna bite me in the ass, but okay. I'm gonna leave X-ray on so that everything I do happens to put the front and the back of the cube. If you hit G, so Blender is all about keystrokes, keyboard shortcuts. G stands for grab. Some people do translate, some people do move, but G stands for grab. So hit G and you can drag this data, this is not the data, the vertex, and just keep dragging. And ideally, this over here, I'll show you what we're gonna do with it in a moment. Now we've got this shape. And I actually want to hide, I'm going to hide the side reference. There we go. This is a very weird looking shape because if you go to the side, it's way too wide. So for now, all we're going to do is select everything, or don't make sure, so select just the shape you want, hit tab to go into edit mode, hit A for all, A stands for all, and then hit S for scale. You hit S for scale, hit X, nope, not X, sorry. Y, okay, see when I hit Y, what that says is please constrain my operation to this specific axis. So if I hit X, you can't see it because I'm looking at the X axis straight on. If I hit Y, I constrain to the Y axis. If I hit Z, scale, Z, go that way. There's one other thing you should know. This is relevant anytime you want to invert an operation in Blender. You do Shift and then like X. And now I can do both Z and Y, but not X. I'm gonna undo those things. Okay, also the concept that you made, that's just a rough guide. You don't have to be faithful to it at all. If you do Option H, nope. You can also go over here. See this little eyeball? You get your guy back. And now we start doing the same process. So if you've hit A to select everything, you can also hit A to deselect everything, but you have to double tap it. Okay. One other fun trick. This might be, I feel like this is way too much, and if it is, that's why this is recorded, so you can go back and look at it again in the future. This little button here, this is I don't know the name, proportional editing. Okay, so if I have this turned off and I grab a single vertex and I try to move it around, just that vertex moves. If I turn proportional editing on, there's actually a fall off around that vertex. And all of a sudden, everything within the range of that fall off moves. If you hit F, you can change the scale of that fall off. This is really useful when you have a really vertex dense mesh and you want to take patches of it and do things with it all at once. We're going to use it for getting this guy's shoulders to make sense. So just select things and sort of pull pieces out. And here we go. Then we sort of have the beginnings of a torso, more or less. You can see there's a couple problems, which is that our inner points are not exactly corresponding. So I'm going to hide our references for a moment. So shift click both references, hit H, they're gone. Yeah. So this is okay, but we need to go into tab mode, go to the top. Here's the thing, in the same way that if you do Command R to do a loop cut, if you do Command click, you can usually select an entire edge loop. Maybe not. It depends on how defined the edge is. And I'm a little bit rusty on my shortcuts, but if we select this loop right here, we can just scale it outward. We can even move individual edges. So this up here by edit mode, this pane, this is vertex editing, this is edge editing, and this is face editing. So face editing is pretty powerful, and we'll use that soon. All right. You'll notice we're running into our first sort of fun little quirk, which is that, you know how 3 points can always make a plane? 4 points don't always make a plane. And you can kind of see that the way Blender is interpolating these points is a little funky. Like if you triangulate it, it's gonna look different than before. So we don't, so see how there's that divot? We don't really want that kind of setup. Oh no, sorry. And so here's where there's one other thing that this is what I was gonna bring up before, but didn't quite make sense yet. Our humanoid has something called bilateral symmetry. So we want the left and the right side to look the same. This is not symmetrical. We could painstakingly make both sides symmetrical if we want, or we can use something in Blender called a modifier, which down here, this little wrench, this whole big toy box of things you can do to your vertex data. And in particular, we want something called a mirror modifier. And you'll notice it's kind of screwy. It's a little bit weird because we have aspects, parts of our mesh, there's this line of symmetry, it goes up and down. Parts of the mesh are overlapping that line of symmetry, which means it's gonna get double folded, which is all kinds of weird. If you hit clip, some of that goes away, but notice over here where it says axis, you can choose to have symmetry in different sorts of directions, or even to have symmetry across multiple axes, but we just want x-axis symmetry up and down. Going into edit mode and wireframe mode, you can see the source of the problem, which is you have this point over here is kind of making a mess for us. So we can literally just delete that point. Now we have a new problem. There's a big hole in our mesh. That's also solvable. So you take these 2 points over here and you scale them out like that. And now see that thing I was saying about crossing the axis again? Also, proportional editing is still on. You can turn that off. See that? Okay, this is important. When I drag a point across my axis, it distorts in all kinds of funny ways and you get self-intersecting geometry. That's bad. So what you do is you put them just next to each other, and Blender is actually smart enough to be able to merge vertices within a certain distance of each other. Here, they're not quite doing that. So we can, there we go, now they are. It's kind of finicky. Now we're almost ready to close this up. So we've got this open box now and we need to make it a closed box. So if I go back to the front view, we're gonna learn a new command, which is extrude. If you hit E, you can see that? I took my edge. Where is it? Come on, edge. So I have 2 points. So extrusion just means you take one thing and you duplicate it and you translate it. I can extrude a point like this, a single point. I can extrude an edge like this, or I can, and actually there are weird, okay, I have some strange stuff there. Okay, that shouldn't have actually happened, but yeah, okay, you got to be careful when you extrude things and then don't delete them. You can end up with weird stuff in your mesh. So if I select, there we go. Okay. Now see, when I selected those 2 vertices, the edge is automatically implicitly selected. If you implicitly select an edge and extrude it, you get a new face, and you can kind of just keep going with it, and you extrude all kinds of funky geometry. And so that's like when people make a scarf, like this might be how you make a scarf. The last thing is you can extrude the face itself like this. And you can constrain it to axes. So if you double tap an axis, it'll be local. If you single tap an axis, it turns off and all this. Anyway, but undoing all of that, what we're gonna do is, see right here, we have our edge right here. We need to extrude out. And I have my, there we go. Yeah, are these lined up? These are not lined up. That's okay. We're gonna hit E for extrusion, and then we're gonna hit X to constrain the extrusion to the X axis. And you'll see that the mirror modifier is smart enough to automatically stop us from going over the axis of symmetry. So then the final step is shift clicking. We're gonna select all of these points and just hit F for fill. And all of a sudden, we just made new edges and new face data. We actually don't want this internal face. So that was a mistake on my part. So if you hit X, instead of delete, you hit X. Like cross out. Delete just that face. And now we're actually gonna, here's a fun trick. If you hit A to select all of the detail in your model and you hit F again, nope. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Now we're gonna do that thing with loops. So geometry modeling is all about loops. Can I get that? Yep, I can get that. When you have four-sided loops, you're in good company because you can turn those loops into faces like that. And you want to do that on the back side as well. And now you've got this weird box that has some strange, you know, there are like divots that we don't quite like. Now we can kind of clean that up. So this is still messy. This is not great, but go to front view. If you hide the concept art, you'll see it's perfectly symmetrically oriented with the axis that we care about. Okay, now we're gonna make more loop cuts because right now, if you'll notice, we have a lot of up and down cuts, but we don't have any left to right cuts. And that makes it harder to manipulate geometry in this direction. So if you go into edit mode with tab, you just hit Control R, you'll see we can make a loop cut. It's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. Does it go all the way around? It doesn't quite go all the way around. That's interesting and not good, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now because we have no time. Now what you can do is if you go to vertex mode and you turn proportional editing back on, you can push and pull and play with some of these vertices and different, and like in particular, you know, if you want, you want the chest to come out a little bit, somewhat, and maybe you constrain to a certain axis like that. That's looking a little bit better. Also, it's still too boxy. Take some of the stuff on the top and pull it in. Too boxy, and then also too, oh, there we go. Now we have slightly better curvature. This hole on the back, can we do anything about that? Kind of. Yeah. Anyway, now we get into shortcut mode, which is we have our base sort of mesh for a torso. And let's see. A check to make sure that your geometry is okay is this merge by distance thing. If you have vertices that are overlapping but they're very, very close together, it can look like a single vertex, but it will behave like two vertices, and that can cause problems. So that just got rid of 6 vertices right there. And maybe I didn't want that. How's this looking? That's fine. Fine for now. Now here's where things start getting next level. Not next level, but where things get more fun. You can imagine that modeling this way, point by point, vertex by vertex, is a little bit annoying. And especially when you have to create new faces, that's also annoying. So that's where we have this thing called a subdivision modifier. We apply that, and suddenly our guy looks a lot more organic. And we're modeling an organic life form. There's also something called hard surface modeling that's different than this. One other thing you can do is see how all these faces are sort of harsh and flat. You can actually change the shading to smooth shading. And then you are simulating smooth normals on flat surfaces, which gives you a little bit of depth. And that's a torso. So now here's what we're gonna do, because I'm over and we need to move soon into rigging. We're gonna extrude out the other limbs really sloppily, really quickly, and that's going to let us have sort of the contours of a human being. So bring back that reference photo. The other thing, when you subdivide like this, you actually lose volume in your mesh, which is not ideal all of the time. So let's see. You can play with the geometry, essentially, to try and make it better match your concept art. All right, now you might be wondering, how are we going to, also I really need to, this loop needs to be not closed. So if you're in a situation like this where you have an edge that really should be two edges, you just hit space and you hit subdivide. And then you do a fill like that. It's not the best way because you have a leftover face, but and then you have some empty geometry, and it gets messy quickly. So this is not ideal. Like, you want to avoid having to clean up manually like that. But once you've done that, again, you select your loops, make a closed loop. As long as the loops are closed, if you hit F, it fills in magically. All right, so there's our model, and here is something we're gonna use this to our advantage. On the bottom right here, we have a face. This is where the power of extrusion comes in. So hit E, and you can just extrude it downward. Extrude it for as many segments as there are torso. Any time more segments is better than no segments. Let's see, grab, can I, okay, go to edge. So we're gonna do, we're gonna just literally tear out this side edge like this to kind of inflate his body a little bit, and just repeat that. And I should be constraining along an axis technically, but now all of a sudden we sort of have a little bit of a torso. We've got this nasty right here. See this? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intersecting lines. That's called a pole. Poles are really bad. You don't want them. And in this case, because you see how it's fucking up the shading for the subdivision? What we can do about that is, if I go here to the side, where is it? This is called a knife tool. And it lets you cut along vertices. And you hit enter. There we go. That's better. We may have created other poles by doing that, but hopefully we didn't. I just want to shift this out. And if you hit, is it double G? Yeah, okay. If you hit G twice, you can actually move the vertex in relation to the plane made in relation to other points around it, which is really useful. So the reason we're getting some weird results here is because we need to pull this out. And as we pull it out, the shaping of the geometry sort of starts to self-resolve. There's one other thing we can do, which is this technique. Let's first do the merge by distance. Okay, that's good. We have no duplicate vertices. We should also do that on the back, but for now, let's just focus on the front. It's important sometimes. The reason why these shadows are all wrong is because there's something called normal data, which is sort of the slope at which light hits a surface. Sometimes you need to recalculate the normals. And we want to do that outside. Now it looks nice again, kind of. Okay, now we sort of have a torso, a little bit. What's also missing is legs. So we can literally just repeat that process we made for extruding the torso with extruding legs. What we want though is geometry for, we want 2 loop cuts sort of going like that. And because the geometry of our mesh isn't ideal, Blender couldn't auto-identify all of this stuff, but that's okay. What we do is we're going to use the knife tool again to just add in those last connecting edges like that. And you can also, now we have that new face right there. That's better. You can do a little bit of cleanup. See how things are wavy, they're not all parallel. It's better if things like these planes line up a little bit. So again, I have proportional editing on. It kind of makes the job a little bit easier. I'm just evening out my face geometry. Somewhat like that. And now, again, we've sort of made the front view look organic, but the side view is still really strange. It's like this blob. So, going to wireframe, we can start to drag things around to try to make it line up with what the vision of the concept was. Like this guy in particular, he seems to have a, like an excavated pelvis, which is a little weird. But as we do this, we're literally so it's kind of like we're just wrapping our mesh around our concept art, which is a nice way of like very quickly going through and fixing things. And now we have something that from most angles looks okay. It's a little weird in the 3/4 view, and that's, what can I do? Shift C. If you want to move things left and right, but not up and down, you hit G and Shift and Z. You can also take edges. Is it Alt? Is it Control? There we go. Yeah, okay. So right now I'm selecting an entire edge, sort of, and if you hit R, you can choose an axis and it's kind of pivot around that axis. And yeah, we're getting a little bit. This is where we're getting close to a use case where sculpting is good when you want to kind of massage geometry like this. Going into the top view, you can see that there's some funky stuff going on. I need my X-ray on, otherwise I'm not going to be doing everything I think I'm doing. So if we want to make this guy look a little more cylindrical, we can sort of pull those in. All right, but I'm getting sidetracked on being perfectionist. So now what we're going to do is finally make those legs. Go to front view. Give me back my reference. This is actually the back view. That's important when you're doing things like feet. You don't want to mix up your feet. let's see, vertex select is fine. So hit B for box select. Drag. Now we have all these edges. Drag down. And then check out, how's that looking? That's okay. Yeah. Now we've done something. Yeah, okay, front view. We can sort of drag this vertex out. We need more though. So we're gonna tear this guy away from, can I do that? Go back to the mirror modifier, what's happening? Clipping, that's happening. There we go. Okay, turn clipping off. This is gonna be a really jank leg, but that's fine. The important thing is we try to establish properly where the knees are. Knees are important. Can make a loop cut, scale that up a little bit, grow it that way. I'm gonna hide my side view because you're gonna notice, our legs are hollow. And we've got some funky stuff happening here. Can I delete that? Maybe, kind of. I see what that was. That was the connection between those two. Yeah, this is getting messy fast. Turn editing off. Pull that in. Is good enough. I'm gonna hide our other concept, and now we're gonna sort of suture shut these legs. So again, you can identify places that are good for building loops. This might, what's the best? Okay, I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna go, I think I'm gonna go here, and we hit F. And then we're gonna go here, and here, and here, and hit F again. And now that kind of closes it up. But now we've made a pentagon. Pentagons are not great because they are prone to producing poles, those 5-pointed things. So again, we can go to knife tool, click and drag up, hit enter to finalize. And then the last little thing to do is identify, okay, go here. We need to sort of fill out his abdomen and his crotch. We're gonna extrude individual points now and make sure that clipping is back on, like that, sort of, ish. Fill that triangle and fill that face. Oh boy, yeah, that's a little iffy, but we're gonna go with it because we're not doing hot on time. And now we have a very wacky geometry of someone's crotch, which is a strange sentence. There are ways to clean this. Again, look, we've made a pole. So we're gonna do that trick from before, which is we're gonna cut around it. And that's gonna help make the geometry a little bit more stomachable. Sort of grab that, shift it in. For here we've got, see how the subdivided mesh is obscuring the original mesh? That means that we're dealing with some geometry that's no. Pull that out, kind of like that. And then more or less you've got, okay. And this looks weird. Again, it looks very weird, but topology wise, I've done worse, so I'm gonna take it. I don't know why that's there, or why this is so far out. So if I were more skilled at this, because I'm not really an artist, I would be quicker and less error prone. But still, that's all just to say that this is a learning process, and even when, you know, I've been using Blender on and off for like a decade. And when I say on and off, I mean more off than on. But now, let's find that side reference. Now we get to finish his legs. And we don't want, what do we want? I guess kind of like this. Making room for feet. Go to that face select again. You literally just extrude out the feet. And you shrink these down. Let's see. Nope. Sorry, hit A, deselect everything. B, get a box. I don't want face select, I want edge select. That's why. Okay. Scale. And we're not. We need to do the skeleton, the x-ray view. Okay, now we've got 2 feet. Now we've got 2 feet. We're going to repeat that for hands, and then we'll start cleaning up for real. So we've got 3 of 4 limbs. This is good. And how are we doing on time? We're like an hour through. So, right. So I'll finish the limbs. We're not really going to refine stuff. Maybe I'll try to do a little bit of unwrapping, but for the most part, we're going to want to go right to animating just to show you that process, because we've got about an hour left. So if anybody has any questions, let me just look. Okay, we're fine. Again, feel free to shout out or type out questions. So gonna go to the side again. So in the way that I model, I oscillate a lot between the side and the front. I don't really do it in 3/4 because when you're in 2 dimensions, people who model in VR, they're a little more freeform, but there are constraints basically. So the reason that we made 2 loop cuts way back was actually very intentional, so that if we select this face, it's going to look weird, but if we extract that out, that's actually the beginning of an arm. And then from an arm, you go into a fist, like that. And it looks like a Play-Doh man, which is not ideal. But that's okay. And our guy is also T-posing, and that's also okay. What is not okay is that if we add bones to this, we're going to get some weird creasing right here. So we actually have to make more loop cuts to sort of increase the resolution of the geometry near the joints. So I'm just going to add lots of loop cuts. And then maybe, can we do one? Yeah, this is jank, but it'll work. Now I've got it sort of like that. Okay. How do you add definition for things like muscles? We might not have time. That's okay. So what I am gonna do is try. Nope. I forgot my X-ray mode. There we go. I'm gonna sort of try to, we don't want him to be totally T-posing. Here's another fun thing. If you need something more precise than box select, if you've got your select tool active and you hit C, you get this little cursor. Lets you kind of paint your selection, which is really valuable. I want to rotate my joint a little bit. Okay, kind of like this. And now it's still not quite a T-pose, but it's gonna, what we're going for is sort of trying to get an idea of where are this guy's gonna have elbows, where are those gonna live? this right here, his armpit, we can kind of pull that out like that. And likewise, if we make another loop cut, we can scale that up. And you can see we're sort of starting to get an idea of something aping muscle definition. So scale, 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 scale. And I'm about close to calling it. This is getting closer to good enough for what we need. Yeah, okay. Forearms and hands don't look like that. Don't tell anyone. All right. Do I turn this off? Turn that on? What side am I looking at? I'm in edit mode. Yeah, Blender gets a little funky when you have to start. That's better. This is more helpful. Nope. One more time. All right, I'm just gonna vaguely try to line the elbow up with where it was in the concept art and the fist up with where it was in the concept art. But you can see how this process, especially if you're as sort of sloppy as I am, can take hours to refine. And that's why there's alternate methods that are a little bit more dynamic than box modeling. But when you're just starting out, this is a good way of getting a sense of the basics. And if we really want, we can actually, just for funsies, fun fact, you have thumbs and they point out of your hand. So let's do that. And then we can, no, that's not good. I didn't want that there. All right, select. We can have little teeny tiny thumbs. And we will merge like that. Not great geometry, but now our guy has a thumb. And you can also sort of, what is it? If you take this loop cut, you kind of sort of almost imagine he's got like fingers, and it's kind of like an oven mitt or boxing glove. And now we've got really jank limbs. All right, so we can do a similar thing. Do we care about how bad? I only care about the feet insofar as if the feet are bad, I want to deal with it. If you're ever like overwhelmed, just hit escape. That'll take you out of all this stuff. Move his feet down to the origin roughly. Kind of like that. A little bit. Oh man, yeah, this is not this is not high class art, but that's okay. I'm gonna call that. The only thing I want to do is, you'll notice there's a little bit of, we need a little bit more resolution by his ankles to have good ankle deformation. So put that in there. Zooming out, going to the side view. This guy's kind of hunched. It's okay. Front, that's okay. The only thing missing is his head. So we're gonna do the same trick as before. Just sort of extrude it out and massage it into looking half decent. Not full decent, just half decent. So again, take this right here. This is sort of supposed to be his neck. Go to front view and hit E to extrude. And look at that, wow. But there is a neck, and we kind of build out a head. balloon head. Okay, perfect. And then from the side, we're going to take these faces and work with those. So extrude those out. And then you can see he almost sort of has a face. And then from here, maybe extrude these out. Nope. Third one. Extrude. Oh boy, that's not good. So something's wrong there with the geometry. Which is a case where if you do the cleanup, merge by distance, that kind of fixes it. Doesn't always fix it, but whatever was going on there, that was fine. Do a loop cut. And in particular, if we turn on proportional editing, we can pull out the sort of the back. Try to make him less crazy looking. So eyes, we don't need eyes, but if we were to do eyes, probably what I would do is grab the knife tool and I guess I would recess it. I'm not sure. Now we're getting past, you know, what's relevant. The only thing maybe would be if you go in here and you cut along, you can kind of make, nope. You can kind of make a nose. And then once you have the nose, you can extrude that out like that. In this case, I want to gonna collapse those two edges like that, which is not great because I'm making a pole again, but and collapse these edges, and you have something. I don't know what this is. It's not what we concepted. That's okay though. Turn off proportional editing, drag down a little bit. It's all facial geometry that's one of the hardest. Everyone has trouble making good faces. But yeah, now go to side view. Let's just refer to the concept. Wireframe, that's what I wanted. So this guy's head, believe it or not, is a little bit big. So we can kind of drag it forward, rotate it down, scale it down, yada, 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 yada. And it more or less matches the model. So I'm gonna call that finished. Notice I haven't saved this entire time. Control S to save. Blender used to warn you before saving, which is weird. So that's now our new geometry, sort of. And we've made a character. We don't really have time to unwrap it and texture it, and that's okay. And this is very, this is the peak of jank, which is why it's good that for your term projects you are doing things in 2 dimensions. So how much time do we have left? We have 50 minutes left. So with 50 minutes on the clock, what we're gonna do is very, very quickly rig this. And then try to make some kind of animation and get it into the engine. We're gonna scrap texturing for now. So I never renamed this from cube. We're gonna call him person. Now, before I apply these modifiers and make everything final, I'm actually going to do Shift and D. Did that do what I thought it would? Nope. You have to. So Blender is also sensitive to which window your mouse is hovering. So Shift D in the viewport. Hide the old one. Now what we're going to do is first apply the modifiers in the order that they're there. And okay. If I go here, now all our geometry is final. This is a little bit high in terms of poly count, which is not great. But so you can do things. There's solutions here, like Blender has some algorithmic things for beautifying faces. You can do things like where is it? Remeshing. That's also useful, but we're not going to talk about those today. That's something called retopology, which is a whole area in and of itself. One thing we could have done before applying these was you can take the levels. So that's what our guy kind of looks like with no subdivision, kind of like a PlayStation 1 character. There is one level of subdivision. The more subdivision levels you add, the funkier things get. But you can play around with that. Okay. Good for now. So, do you guys have any questions? Oh, there is a question. Normally, would you start from scratch when developing new models, or is this some? Yeah, so that's if you were to do the sculpting workflow. What people will do is there's a whole other God. So if I shift duplicate, so some people, they always start from scratch and they block model like this. But see this tab over here, sculpting. This is a completely different world where in some ways it's easier to do stuff. Let me see, we want accumulate. There we go. This is one way that people do things. It's kind of like they'll do clay strips, and they will you would use something called dynamic topology, which is a whole funky thing, and they will edit their mesh this way. And so see, if you start with a humanoid base mesh and you want to turn it into like an orc, you want to give him horns, you have to draw out your horns like this, and I don't know, you can manipulate data this way, and that's definitely something I'm not very good at. Not that I'm good at block modeling either, but you can kind of see, like, if you have, you can, yeah, sculpting is the way to go. You'll have a base. If you were doing a AAA character model where you're going to have 50,000 faces and you want it to look photorealistic, ideally you would block model your low res base mesh, and then you push it around in sculpt mode till it looks good, and you bake the geometry details back down onto the thing underneath. Yeah, so, oh, and you can see if you're not careful, dynamic topology makes many more vertices than before. So sculpting is a different workflow, which is just a little bit too complicated for today, and one that I'm not comfortable enough with. I'm gonna pause for 30 seconds to drink water, and we have 45 minutes on the clock, so we're gonna it's gonna be a very strange walk cycle. Also, you can sort of see this guy is top heavy. His torso is much bigger than his hips, and it's also longer than his legs. So there's some like proportional stuff from the concepting I was doing. I wasn't very careful. All right, make sure you're in object mode. We're making a new object. It's called an armature. An armature is just a container for your bones, your puppet stuff. So we're going to build this guy's skeleton. The skeleton lives inside of an armature. It's made out of bones. There's also an edit mode for armatures. So instead of selecting entire bones, you select points on bones. Bones are like meshes, but they only have 2 points. This right here, we're going to call this the root bone. That's important for certain things in Unity some of the time. It's not important for us today, but it's good to name all your bones. Armatures work similar to instantiating new meshes. You do shift and you do A. You get new bones. Where do we go? Here. Visibility. Nope. There we go. Okay, so this little thing over here, these armature settings, go to viewport display and do in front. And now you can see your bones and all that instead of having them occluded by the mesh. So right now we're gonna try to loosely sketch out all the joint points on a human that we'd care about. So this is like his pelvis, and here's his abdomen, and the abdomen turns, and by the way, I'm hitting E to extrude bones. It turns into sort of a thoracic cavity, and then you have his sternum, and then from there you have his neck, and then you have his head. And now I'm gonna turn to the side, and you're gonna see it looks like a mess. Wow! We need to bring these in line with what is already existing. So, boom. Also, you can hide the original. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, there's some funkiness, but that's okay. Try to locate bones sort of in the center of where they're going to deform, but then so the pivot point, sort of imagine like if you have a ball joint like here, which part of your torso pivots? The center of your torso doesn't pivot, the edge of your torso pivots. But then with your neck, it's going to pivot back here, and your head is going to pivot somewhere over here. And the other thing is like you want to try to make it so that we line up with some of remember we were making loop cuts before near the bendy parts. Line up the nodes of the bones with where those loop cuts were. Also, I don't need the iPad anymore, so I'm gonna plug it into the wall. My laptop, I mean. There we go. This way the battery won't die. Okay. There we go. Now we have more of a skeleton. These bones, so I'm going to show you something called pose mode. Pose mode is just where you're not changing the initial state of the bone, you're changing sort of their animation state. These bones over here, if I pivot the root, all of the other ones move. This root is not pivoting the other bones because I didn't parent. When you add a bone, if you extrude a bone, it's automatically parented. If you add a bone, it's not. So you have to do that manually. So you go, the things you want to parent, you click on them first, and then your target parent, click on that last, do Control P, and do keep offset. Now, when I rotate the root, the hips follow. Okay. So very quickly now, we just need to make his, so Shift A to add a bone, his arms. Notice I'm grabbing the edge of a bone. And his arms go out like that. And you can duplicate bones with Shift D in the same way that you can, X, there we go. Okay, so what I just did is I hit scale, I hit X, and then I typed in -1. And that lets me extrude out arms, and then we're gonna do the same thing for legs. Down here, over here. This can go all the way down, and you go to side view. We have to play that game where we line everything up again. So, nope, wrong one. Move him back. Legs should be roughly like that. And I forgot to do that with the arms. So we don't have a mirror modifier when we're doing stuff with armatures. So you just have to try to synchronize all your operations yourself, which can be hard. There we go. That's good enough. Make a foot. foot can bend, his feet are too long. Duplicate all of these. Scale X, -1, enter, grab, line up, and now these guys need to be parented to the sternum, and these guys need to be parented to the hips. Now you stress test your rig. So if I move my root, everything should move. That looks good. If I move my hips, everything should still move. But if I move my like lower thorax bone, my lumbar spine or whatever, just the top should move. And if I move these guys, those should move. Yeah, this is all good. We're set. Save. All right, now the last little thing to do is, you might be wondering, so we've got bendy bones, how do we make the flesh bend? How do we make the skinned part of the skinned mesh bend? It's very quick to do it dirty. It's a lot harder to do it neatly. So we need to parent our mesh to our armature. So click on the mesh and then shift click on the armature, Command P, and down here, armature deform, empty groups, envelope weights, automatic weights. We're gonna do automatic weights. Looks like nothing happened, but now if we click our mesh again, not the mesh, if we click the armature again, we go to pose mode. Here's the magic. Whoa, look at that. He's bendy. Wow. Great. Now we can animate walk cycles and associated things. Here's the problem though. Let's say I want to put, this is this inverse kinematics thing. We mentioned, let me check for questions. Cool. Oh, thank you, Hannah. If we want to move this hand all the way up here, we can't. So that's where inverse kinematics can be useful. We're gonna do the very abbreviated version. So these are like rig bones, like these correspond to actual parts of the body. Now we're gonna make things called control bones. And those can be used for positioning rig bones. So the only bone they're gonna be parented to is the root. So hit Shift A, oh, nope, armature, tab, Shift A. Okay, how are we doing on time? We have 40 minutes, nice. This is gonna be, so inverse kinematics is when you have one bone at the end of a chain that makes the rest of the chain move with it. And then you have something else called a pole, which lets you resolve ambiguity in which way the chain is pointing. And it's easier to show it than to explain it. So what we're gonna do is drag this over here, shrink it down. Also, I haven't named any of my bones, which is not good, but the important thing will be to name, basically it's important to name the extremities. If nothing else, it's better to name everything, but if you can't, so this will be hand dot right. This will be hand dot left. This will be foot dot right. This will be foot dot left. This will be neck. This will be head. And then this will be hips. And this will be sternum. And then the other stuff is all intermediate and we don't care as much about it. All right. So this is a control bone over here that we're going to use to make what's called a bone constraint. We're going to do one other thing, which is what's called a pole. So Shift A again, make it point out. And then we're going to call it arm. We're going to pole dot arm dot right. And take it out over here. Okay, good. Now we have our control right here and we have our pole. The control is the reference for everything else. So go here, this guy. Or is it actually this one? I always forget. Tab is in edit mode. We need not an object constraint. This is where Blender is super convoluted. Go to pose mode. Now there's this new thing called a bone constraint. You can only make them in pose mode. Okay, go to inverse kinematics. Now, target. Okay, so we need this bone, our forearm, to track our control. And then, so we go here. Did I name it? I might not have named it. I don't think I did. This is why you name your bones, so that you can find them later. We're gonna call it IK arm right. Over here, we're gonna track to IK arm right. Pull target is pull armature. Okay, parent thing is armature. So pull, and then we need to find pull arm like that. Now funky things are happening. That's okay. Chain length, this is what's important. Right now, every single bone in this whole mesh is being influenced by this constraint. We need to restrict that to 2. Magic. All right, now here's the cool part. We're in pose mode, right? So if I hit G, wow, bendy arms. Amazing. And the pull, here's why the pull is important. So I put my arm up like this. If I move the pull around, it changes the angle of the bend. And that's super basic IK. Nope. Keep the chain length at 2. All right. Now I'm gonna do that really, really fast for the legs and for the other arm. And then we're gonna animate in like 15 minutes and export to Unity and plug it into something. So front view, let's check for questions. Questions are fine. Okay, front view. We're literally gonna, nothing is parented yet. So we're just gonna duplicate these. Nope. Edit mode. I get edit mode and pose mode confused. It's Blender. Blender is powerful, but it's confusing. Move that over there. Move that over there. Fix the naming. Arm should be not dot right, but dot left. Pull should be dot left also. And then we're gonna be very, very quick and dirty and recycle all of these for the feet. So you can sort of scale things. Although, you know, you don't want to. No, yeah, scaling can be nice for keyframing, but not so much for this. So the pull here, the pull goes by the knees. Knees and elbows kind of correspond, and then the heel is where the control goes. This is going to be IK dot foot dot or leg dot right. This one's going to be IK dot leg dot left. And now we need to do a little bit of correction. The pulls, this is going to be pull dot leg dot left, and this is going to be pull dot leg dot right. And then We actually want it, the pole should be, your knees point, so the pole should point in the direction of the joint, basically. There we go, like that. And then these guys should align fairly closely with the heel. Like that. And now we're ready to do RK targeting again. So we click this bone, we go to pose mode, we make new constraints, IK, target, armature, pull target, armature, target. We're going to do ik.leg.right. We're going to do pull.leg.right. And then we constrain the chain length to 2. And some funky stuff is happening. But this is why we need now something called a pull angle. And you're going to see the foot come back out to where it was supposed to be, roughly. I don't completely understand what pull angle does, but it's sort of like the offset of all the transformations you make. IK. Again, it gets a little bit repetitive. Rigging can be a little bit repetitive. We do ik.arm.left. Pull target is armature. And then pull.leg.left. And pull angle again of 90 degrees and chain length of 2. Oh boy, that's funky for sure. Did I do the wrong? Haha! See, look, I constrained it to the arm. ik.leg.left. There we go, and then keep this at 90. And then we're good, and then we have one more, and we can start animating. Which is, we go here, we go to constraint, we go to IK, we select our armature, we do ik.arm.left, and then we do armature, and then we do pull.arm.left, and chain length of 2, pull angle of, actually I think the pull angle is fine. Nope, we need to do 180. There we go. And now, loosely, if you save this, we're more or less rigged. So here's the upshot of all of that. If I am in pose mode. Okay. So we're gonna jump, how much time? Half an hour. Nice. Okay, we can animate in 15 minutes. So now we're gonna make a walk cycle. And here's why all of this is really important. Walk cycles are infinitely easier to do if you have easy access to bones. So, and there's one thing we haven't done, which is parent the, I'm gonna take my controls. So this guy, make sure we're in edit mode for this. This guy, and we're going to parent them all to the root. And then I'm actually, this is, it's debatable if this is good practice or not, but it's sort of a shortcut. You can parent the poles to the controls, and you'll see why that's relevant in a moment. So I personally find that modeling for me is the hardest part of this process. The rigging and the animating is, there's more room to be sloppy. Let's hope I did that the right way. Pose mode. Control there, yeah, there we go. Now you see how the pole sort of tracks. You get the leg motion. And it's always good to just sanity check the stuff that you rigged. And that goes for these two. Yeah, okay. This guy good? He's good. So now we're gonna get into something called actions, which is, guess what? There's even more to Blender. This button right here records keyframes. Keyframes are like, you know, the extremes of poses and things like that. But I need to make a new window. Don't ask how I'm doing this. It's very confusing. You've got basically, if you drag down to the top corner, you can duplicate windows, and that's valuable. Go to Dope Sheet, and then from Dope Sheet, go to Action Editor. Actions are, again, those are just clips. We're making a new animation clip, and we're going to call it idle. So this is just our guy standing still. Now it's important, you know, we have so little time, I can't really explain all of this in detail. But basically it's important to have start and end keyframes, and then everything in the middle kind of just gets interpolated. So if I hit A to select all of the bones and I hit I, this inserts a keyframe. I'm going to do location, rotation, and scale. I want my idle sequence to be 60 frames long, which is 2 seconds. Hit I again. This is our loop point. If we play this, how do you play? Shift spacebar. Also constrain to 60. If I play this, nothing happens, because we have 2 keyframes and there's no difference between them, so there's nothing to interpolate. But if I go to the middle, I can grab, what do I want to grab? Sometimes it's nice to do like a head bob. And maybe, let's see, when you're idling, you don't have your hands spread out like this. You're gonna move them down like so. I'm not gonna worry about the hands. And now actually hit A again. I'm gonna duplicate this keyframe. If I go over here, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make him bob with his hips. This is where IK gets cool. It automates a lot of the hard stuff. So I've got his pelvis selected, I hit G. Wow, he's like rocking back and forth and stuff. I'm gonna bend his legs slightly and then take his feet and bend those up. And I guess his hands should do something also. So take the controls for his hands, and maybe he's just swinging them, I don't know. Can I pull? Yeah, the pull angles for his elbows might actually be off. But now what we've done though is if we play this back, it's gonna look super jank. But he's like moving and stuff. And these are like, so we have a couple sets of key poses basically. We've got our in, our completely relaxed, and then he bends his knees and then he goes relaxed again. So you can even do things like follow through. If he bends his legs really violently, like all the way down and back, kind of rocks a little bit to one side, then maybe what happens is there's some inertia to the rest of his body, and that's going to take a second to compensate. Which you can see, and then we have the, what's happening? interesting. So his head's going up and then back. So we could say that there's a little bit of delay with his neck. And I want to shorten the window. So this is not good. This is not good at all. But you can kind of begin to see how if you put keyframes at different points in time, you can get overlapping primary and secondary motion, and you get some fun stuff out of that. And you can even, like, if you wanted to go all out, you could make his you can do non-primary axis motion where you, like, maybe he bends a little bit in both ways, and I don't know, it's gonna look weird because his hands are pinned. That's sort of like he's shimmying a little bit. But if you take all of this stuff and you can play with the scaling of keyframes, like you can make it all much faster. And as long as you keep the loop points proper, it should. You're gonna get weird funk, but it's something. And if you want it to really look like it's looping, the last thing you just got to do is drag this in, set the out point at 31 frames. And now he's like sort of dancing in place a little bit. We're going to call that his idle animation. But now we need one more because I promised you two. We're going to go to this button, new action, and we're going to call it run. Now you can see that idle and run share the same keyframes. That's actually not ideal. So we're gonna with run selected, we're gonna delete all those keyframes, and now we're gonna set our key poses again. So running is interesting because you basically have two sides of your body which are going in opposite directions, and they just do that over and over. So take your control for your arm, move it way out. You can take the pole. What do I want to do? Kind of want it to bend. Yeah, I want his arms to bend in this direction. Yeah, I think my pole angle on the arms is wrong. It's like it's backwards. So we're gonna have him do a wacky run because that's our constraint. We have a shitty rig, so the run is going to be wacky. Grab his other arm, go the other way. So these are sort of his extremes of motion, where he's just kind of flailing. The more important part for looking convincing is his legs. So you have, when you are walking, your legs do some, they have contact points with the ground. And at those contact points, your toes bend. Oh, I need my controls and bring all that down. That's our in. For everything that's not keyframed, keyframe it. Duplicate it. Now we have our reverse. So now what's going to happen is the feet switch places, basically. Oh, where's our guy? It can get confusing keeping track of which bones go where, and you're going to have to do some adjusting with pole angle stuff. That's fine. And we're just mirroring movements. And it's going to look really wacky because of all kinds of pole target issues. And now if we play this back, wow, he's like walking kind of, but not really. So there's intermediate poses with walking where you lift your body up in the middle, and one of your legs goes like this, and oh god, which side was that? Yeah, so now he needs to be down, I think, like that. He needs to be the one that's up, and we can flatten the toes a little bit. Oh, somewhat like that. So now you have a really, really jank walk, but there's a little bit of delay because we set our out keyframe slightly late. Oh. So move this back and put the cutoff at 29. Yeah, there's the pausing, the lurching is not ideal. You can do some stuff about that in Unity actually. But now we've got vertical motion and horizontal motion, and how much time do we have? We have 15 minutes, so we're almost there. Yeah, the only other thing I would say is if he's going forward, you can actually, you can bend his body forward. And then I don't know, it's gonna look weird, but he can kind of, he's gonna have some wacky follow through, but yeah, okay, this is like some 1930s cartoon weirdness. If you select all of this, again, I'm not doing any, this is bad, but it's okay. Make it faster. Make him like almost running. And then we're ready to export. And I'll show you how to export. Perfect, it's so jank. Okay, so he's going up and he's going down and through, and why is he pausing? Why is he pausing? Okay. Also, these in and out points, we're gonna have to manually key them. That's better, kind of, not really, but the only thing I would note is that the arms, those are follow through motions, so they shouldn't, his arms are swinging, they should be in different places. There you go. Now you have a little bit of, and also take his head. The head is also follow through. Follow through just means the things take time to catch up. And like here, you might do that, and you can bend his spine back a little bit. Oh, my cat's here. Hi, cat. And that is just like crazy stuff, but you can get some really whack motion. Armature action. Oh no, what happened to run? Idle is still there. Armature action is still there. Okay, A. Well, we're gonna call this run final and hope that it saves. So you can toggle between these. So the idling is still working, the running is still working, all that stuff. Now is the one thing, you know, so it's 3 o'clock. I have 10 minutes. Nope, don't come on the table, kitty. The cat's right here, and he wants attention. No. Okay, now we gotta work on the cat. Thank you. Bye. If we leave pose mode, it would be fun with our mesh to maybe, so let's see what we can do. I'm gonna make one more window, and I'm gonna set it to something called the UV editor. I'm not really going to explain what I'm doing, and that's okay, but we're going to do box project. Now we have our little man over here. And what's going to happen is let's find Lee Bollinger. Perfect. That's a straight on shot. I'm gonna screenshot. No, we don't even need this. Oh yeah, no, screenshot. Okay. Just his face. Capture that. If we head into Blender, I'm gonna leave this for a moment and make it something called a shader editor. We need to make a new material. We're gonna call it his skin. And essentially his base color is gonna come from a texture. No, kitty, no. Almost in 10 minutes. And that texture lives in this node editor down here. Can I zoom? Maybe. Yeah, and we're just gonna open a new image. We're gonna go to my downloads. No, my documents actually. We're gonna grab Lee Bollinger. And now Lee Bollinger is a texture for our program. And we're gonna take this man's face and we're gonna scale his face way up. And if I rotate it, I can line it up like that. And if I go over here and I go to rendered, maybe, let's see, did it work? Look, everybody, it's Lee Bollinger's face on our little man. And for everything else, what we can do here, we need to box select like this. Okay. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, always forget the X-ray. So we can take everything but his face and we can just scale it down. We can scale it down and we can make it skin. And now we just have Lee Bollinger, but he is skin Bollinger. And yeah, so that's how you texture very, very, very quickly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to export all of this. So you go to your armature, but you need not just the armature, you also need, oh man, where are my options? I don't want to be in edit mode. Okay, yeah. So you need two things. You need your mesh and you need your armature. And then you go to file, let's say first file, you go to export, you go to FBX, because remember that's that Unity format, and you just do your selected objects. And this is fine, and we're going to name him Bollinger, just like that. Okay, now we're ready to open Unity. So we go in here, and we're almost, I promise you we're almost done. We've got 5 minutes on the clock. If you're okay with it, I'll do 10 more. Because we're very close to finish. So let me see. Any questions? No questions. I do not want the new version of Unity. No, thank you. Okay, so here's how importing things works. You go to import new asset. And we saved this guy to documents. So let's go in there. And we grab Bollinger. But we don't just grab Bollinger, we also need his texture, which is right here. And you'll notice now we got to go through, yeah, the material is mapped just fine. Yeah, with animations though, what we need to do is make sure that everything loops. So there's our loop. That looks okay. Let me do the run. And that also looks okay. All right, and now I mentioned something called an animator controller. We need to create that. We go here to animator controller and Bollinger controller, and we open this up. Here's our state machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to have, we need a parameter to just say if we're walking or not. So parameters, we're going to make a Boolean. We're going to call it is walking. So when we enter, we create a state. We're going to call this state the idle state. And we associate it with the nope. Weird run final. Let's try that. I don't know if it's going to work, but what happened? Why did it get renamed? Oh no, did it overwrite the clip? That's really weird. Huh. Very strange. Oh, we seem to have lost our idle animation. That's okay. You know what? We're out of time. That's fine. If that's the case, then we don't even really care about this state machine. We just take the run final clip. When we enter, we just go here right away. And now our player, we have our scene. I'm going to open up the prefab view. Go to front. Bring in Lee Bollinger. Oh, he's a big boy, isn't he? All right. Yeah, okay, he's 2 units tall. So instead of my capsule is 1 unit. So I'm gonna take him and scale him down. I don't actually know how tall the real life Lee Bollinger is. And over here we add a component. We don't even add a component actually. We take our controller, put it on. And now I'm going to go here and just turn off the mesh renderer and edit the capsule collider so that it is a little bit tinier than Lee Bollinger is. And my sphere, that's kind of big, but that's okay, I think. Yeah. All right, and that's that. So you hit save, go out, and magically, where once was a capsule, now there's a Bollinger. It's still not going to be right. You're going to see why it's especially jank. But if we play, there's our bruh, but he's not running. Oh no. Why isn't he running? What's going on? What's happening? No. I just want you to see him swinging his legs. That's all I ask. So we go in here and we go to here and any state. Do we do that? Okay, make a connection to there. Idle. Is it not looping? I think it's not looping. Yeah, that's why it's not looping. Okay. Okay. So that's because it has exit time, right? So loop time, loop pose. Yeah, there you go. So make sure you check those boxes right there. and you should have a walking boy, and there he is. There's the walking boy. Although he's very very tiny, but yeah, that's Lee Bollinger in the Unity game engine, and you know that's it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. That's the presentation. It's, I knew we'd run out of time, and we did, but that's okay because I think we got there. So any questions?